Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna. It's okay now? Yeah, it's my machine. It's a little tablet, and I changed some settings in it. I thought it would help, but I'm gonna have to figure out what's wrong with it. So, Hare Krishna, Haribo, Krishna. Good morning to you, and good night to Jocelyn. I think it's like what, 10 o'clock at night in the Philippines. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Well, we'll figure it out, what's wrong with the machine, and get it working eventually. Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Guru. It'd be fun to chant together, and we could go on Zoom, but let's see if we can't get Facebook up and running. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yeah, that one line out of Krishna book that we read yesterday is so striking. It's just how there's no difference between meditating on the transcendental forms of Radha and Krishna and chanting the Maha Mantra Hare Krishna. I've just been thinking, and Prabhupada, he said that when you're chanting Hare Krishna, Radha and Krishna are dancing on your tongue. You're chanting Hare Krishna, Radha and Krishna are dancing. So I'm thinking dancing, and I'm kind of, what I've seen of dancing in the material world is like, it's an art form, and they're dancing, like ballet, and then, they're in they're dancing. It's a manifestation of dancing, and people, they go and they would watch these expert performers dance, and he swings her around, and she puts her in the air, and then and then she's over here, he's over there, and then they come together and they swirl around and they're dancing. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's combined, Radha and Krishna combined, in her mood of separation from Krishna. Okay, Hare Krishna. These spiritual forms and pastimes and activities, relationships, spiritual. It's wonderful. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hari Hari, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Chaitanya. Krishna, Mahamantra it's the seed that expanded out the whole spiritual world, expanded out from Hare Krishna, Radha Krishna. Material world also, but it's external. It's not the internal potency, it's external. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. What is it? In the spiritual world, all speaking is singing, and all moving is dancing. So how powerful is music? Even in this world. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I've been practicing for 50 years, but I feel like I'm a new devotee. It's all new, it's all fresh, always. There's always something new, something more. You're always like new to it, you know. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. All right. Lord Krishna's daily activities. Say, what's new? You know how people meet each other. Say, hey, hi, how you doing? What's new? Oh, same old, same old. This is new. It's always new. It's a summary study of the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. So we were hearing about Krishna, what his daily activities are. And he appeared as a householder to show people how to live as householders and make progress in spiritual advancement in Krishna consciousness. But Krishna can't be imitated. He needs to be followed, his example followed, but not imitated. So there's a difference. And where the difference comes in is Krishna was maintaining 16,108 households simultaneously and being individually unique in each one, his activities, and still being Krishna. So that can't be imitated. But his example, if you look at any one of the households, how he was behaving, that can be followed. So he can't be imitated because his potency is out of this world. But his example can be followed, how he behaved. And Prabhupada was making that point toward the end of the last paragraph. How the difference between an ordinary living being and Krishna. For an ordinary living being, there are many distinctions. An ordinary living being is different from his body, and he's different from other species of living entities. A human being is different from other human beings and different from the animals. Even in his own body, there are different bodily limbs. We have hands and legs, but our hands are different from our legs. The hand cannot act like the leg, nor the leg act like the hand. The eyes cannot hear like the ears, nor can the ears see like the eyes. All these differences are technically called Svajtiya Vijtiya. Svajtiya Vijtiya. The bodily limitation whereby one part of the body cannot act as another part is totally absent in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's no difference between his body and himself. He's completely spiritual, and therefore no material difference between his body and his soul. Similarly, he's not different from his millions of incarnations and plenary expansions. Baladev is the first expansion of Kṛṣṇa, and from Baladev expand Kṛṣṇa, Vasudeva, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. From Kṛṣṇa there is again an expansion of Narayan, and from Narayan there is a second quadruple expansion of Kṛṣṇa, Vasudeva, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. Similarly, there are innumerable expansions of Kṛṣṇa. But all of them are one. Kṛṣṇa has many incarnations, such as Lord Nrsimha, Lord Boar, Lord Fish, Lord Tortoise. But there's no difference between Kṛṣṇa's original two-handed form, like that of a human being, and these incarnations of gigantic animal forms. Nor is there any difference between the action of one part of his body and that of another. Kṛṣṇa is pretty inconceivable. There's no difference between the action of one part of his body and that of another. His hands act like his legs. His eyes can act as his ears. His nose can act as any part of his body. Kṛṣṇa's smelling, eating, and hearing are all the same. Well, that's kind of weird, isn't it? Kṛṣṇa, stop eating with your nose. Kṛṣṇa, we limited living entities have to use a... Okay. Hare Kṛṣṇa. Kṛṣṇa, now a word from our sponsor. Cuckoo. We limited living entities have to use a particular part of our body for a particular purpose, but there's no such distinction for Kṛṣṇa. In the Brahma Samhita it is said, Ajnani yasya sakalendriya vritti. He can perform the activities of one limb with any other limb. So, by analytical study of Kṛṣṇa and his person, it is concluded that he is the complete whole. When he meditates, therefore, he meditates on himself. The self-meditation by ordinary men, designated in Sanskrit as Soham, is simply imitation. Kṛṣṇa may meditate on himself because he is the complete whole, but we cannot imitate him and meditate on ourselves. Our body is a designation. Kṛṣṇa's body is not a designation. Kṛṣṇa's body is also Kṛṣṇa. There's no existence of anything foreign in Kṛṣṇa. Whatever there is in Kṛṣṇa is also Kṛṣṇa. He is therefore the supreme, indestructible, complete existence, or the supreme truth. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa. Kṛṣṇa. Krishna's existence is not relative existence. Everything else but Kṛṣṇa is a relative truth. But Kṛṣṇa is the supreme absolute truth. Okay, that's a little tricky. That's tricky. In the previous Prabhupada, his purports and his he develops something to reach a conclusion. So he starts out with something and then he continues and he takes it to the conclusion. So he's developing something here. But this is really interesting. Because he says whatever there is in Kṛṣṇa is also Kṛṣṇa. He's the complete existence. Now, in the next paragraph, he says, everything else but Kṛṣṇa. Wait a minute, you just said everything was Kṛṣṇa. So what is this? Everything else but Kṛṣṇa? A little tricky. Krishna's existence is not relative existence. Everything else but Kṛṣṇa is relative truth. Okay, Prabhupada's got to help us out here because this is... But Kṛṣṇa is the supreme absolute truth. Okay, so this is how the impersonal conception is destroyed. Establishing Kṛṣṇa as the absolute truth, the complete, everything is Kṛṣṇa. Now, this is how the dynamics within Kṛṣṇa, how it's simultaneously one and different, Achinta Veda Veda Tattva. In Kṛṣṇa and yet different from Kṛṣṇa, but still Kṛṣṇa. And this allows for pastimes, activities, creation, activities. That's how everything goes on. The personality of Godhead. Kṛṣṇa. So this is defeating the impersonalness. Kṛṣṇa does not depend on anything but himself for his existence. Our existence, however, is relative. For example, only when there is the light of the sun, the moon, or electricity are we able to see. Our seeing, therefore, is relative. And the light of the sun and moon and electricity is also relative. They are called illuminating only because we see them as such. Dependence and relativity do not exist in Kṛṣṇa. Well, now wait a minute. Everything's in Kṛṣṇa. So how can this be? Dependence and relativity do not exist in Kṛṣṇa. They do. Because everything's in Kṛṣṇa. But they don't. His activities are not dependent on anyone else's appreciation, nor does he depend on anyone else's help. He is beyond the existence of limited time and space because he is transcendental to time and space. He cannot be covered by the illusion of Maya, whose activities are limited. In the Vedic literature, we find that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has multi-potencies. Since all such potencies are emanations from him, there's no difference between him and his potencies. They're emanations from him, so they're separate from him, but they're connected to him. So they're also in Kṛṣṇa. But there's different ways of being connected to Kṛṣṇa. Certain philosophers say, however, that when Kṛṣṇa comes, he accepts a material body. But even if it is accepted that when he comes to the material world, he accepts a material body, it should be concluded also that because the material energy is not different from him, this body does not act materially. Just like when he incarnates as sound, it's in the material, gross material element of sound, along with a lot of other words and activities and noises. They're all in sound, and they act materially. They have actions and reactions, and they're bound by the material modes and like this. But when Kṛṣṇa appears in sound, he's transcendental. It doesn't act materially, it acts spiritually. Kṛṣṇa. So similarly, when he accepts a material body, it doesn't act materially, it acts spiritually. So again, that wonderful statement yesterday, that there's no difference between meditating on the forms of Radha Kṛṣṇa and chanting Hare Krishna. There's no difference. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said, therefore, that he appears by his own internal potency, Atma Maya. So he accepts the material form, but it doesn't act materially. Because everything belongs to him, he can do that. Kṛṣṇa is called the Supreme Brahman because he is the cause of creation, the cause of maintenance, and the cause of dissolution. Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva are different expansions of these material qualities. All these material qualities can act upon the conditioned souls, but there is no such action and reaction upon Kṛṣṇa because these qualities are all simultaneously one and different from him. Kṛṣṇa himself is simply Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha, the eternal form of bliss and knowledge. And because of his inconceivable greatness, he's called the Supreme Brahman. His meditation on Brahman or Paramatma or Bhagavan is on himself, and not on anything else beyond him. This meditation cannot be imitated by ordinary living entities. Whew, Kṛṣṇa. Okay, so what does Kṛṣṇa do? Here we go. This was all about his meditation. And the difference between our meditation and our position and Kṛṣṇa's meditation. So here's his activities. After his meditation, the Lord would regularly bathe early in the morning with clear, sanctified water. Then he would change into fresh clothing, cover himself with a wrapper, and then engage himself in his daily religious functions. Out of his many religious duties, the first was to offer oblations into a sacrificial fire and silently chant the Gayatri mantra. Lord Kṛṣṇa, as the ideal householder, executed all the religious functions of a householder without deviation. That was before sunrise. When the sunrise became visible, the Lord would offer specific prayers to the sun god. The sun god and other demigods mentioned in the Vedic scriptures are described as different limbs of the body of Lord Kṛṣṇa. And it is the duty of the householder to offer respects to the demigods and great sages, as well as the forefathers. It is said in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord has no specific duty to perform in this world, and yet he acts just like an ordinary human living an ideal life within this material world. In accordance with Vedic ritualistic principles, the Lord would offer respects to the demigods. the regulative principles by which the demigods and forefathers are worshipped is called Kṛṣṇa, which means pleasing. One's forefathers might have to take a body on another planet, but by performance of this Kṛṣṇa system, they become very happy wherever they may be. It is the duty of the householder to make his family members happy, and by following this Kṛṣṇa system, he can make his forefathers happy also. As the perfect exemplary householder, Lord Sri Kṛṣṇa followed the Kṛṣṇa system and offered respectful obeisances to the elderly superior members of his family. Kṛṣṇa. Now, his next duty was to give cows in charity to the Brahmanas. Lord Kṛṣṇa used to give as many as 13,084 cows. That's a pretty specific number. 13,084. Pretty specific. Each of them was decorated with a silken cover. Now, this is in each of the palaces. These are his activities. Those are 16,108 palaces. In each of these palaces, he's giving away 13,084 cows to Brahmanas. It's said that the population at the time of Krishna's appearance like this was in the billions. There was billions of family members, actually. That's just family members. Krishna's family members numbered into the billions. And what to speak of the citizens of Dwarka, who weren't necessarily related family members. Those are big numbers. Those are really big numbers. When everything's in order, evidently, this planet can support a lot more human beings. But due to mismanagement and the Kali Yuga, and they're complaining overpopulation, and they wish a lot of people would die already because it's too difficult to manage. But there was a fantastic number of human beings on the planet at the time. Okay, so 13,084 cows to the Brahmins, times 16,108. Each of them was decorated with a silken cover and pearl necklace. Their horns were covered with gold plating, and their hooves were silver plated. This just staggers. This is like beyond being able to conceive of anything like this. 16,108 times 13,084 cows, all decorated with silk, pearl necklaces, gold plating on their horns, and silver on their hooves. All of them were full of milk due to having their firstborn calves with them, and they were very tame and peaceful. When the cows were given in charity to the Brahmins also were given nice silk garments, and each was given a deerskin and sufficient quantity of sesame grains. The Lord is generally known as Gobrahmana Hitaicha, which means that his first duty is to see to the welfare of the cows and the Brahmanas. This is for civilized human society. This is how civilized human society is organized, managed. Krishna is showing this culture, Krishna conscious society, what it looks like. Thus he used to give cows in charity to the Brahmanas with opulent decorations and paraphernalia. Then, wishing for the welfare of all living entities, he would touch auspicious articles such as milk, fire, honey, ghee, clarified butter, gold, jewels, and fire. Although the Lord is by nature very beautiful due to the perfect figure of his transcendental body, still he would dress himself in yellow garments and put on his necklace of Kaustubha jewels. he would wear flower garlands, smear his body with the pulp of sandalwood, and decorate himself with other similar cosmetics and ornaments. It is said that the ornaments themselves became beautiful upon being placed on the transcendental body of the Lord. After decorating himself in this way, the Lord would then look at marble statues of cows. The Lord would look at marble statues of cows and calves. Oh no, all right. Would look at marble statues of the cow and calf. Visit temples of god or demigods like Lord Shiva. There were many Brahmins who would come daily to see the Supreme Lord before taking their breakfast. They were very anxious to see him, and he welcomed them. Okay? His next duty was to please all kinds of men belonging to the different castes, both in the city and within the palace compound. He made them happy by fulfilling their different desires, and when the Lord saw them happy, he also became very much pleased. The flower garlands, betel nuts, sandalwood pulp, and other fragrant cosmetic articles which were offered to the Lord would be furnished by him, first to the Brahmins and elderly members of the family, then to the queens, then to the ministers, and if there were still some balance, he would utilize it for his own personal use. By the time the Lord finished all these daily duties and activities, his charioteer Daruka would come with his wonderful chariot to stand before the Lord with folded hands, intimating that the chariot was ready, and the Lord would come out of the palace to travel. Then the Lord, accompanied by Uddhava and Satyaki, would ride on the chariot, just as the sun god rides on his chariot in the morning. Wait a minute, he didn't eat anything. When's he going to eat something? No. All right, still early in the morning, evidently. Would ride on the chariot just as the sun god rides on his chariot in the morning, appearing with his blazing rays on the surface of the earth. When the Lord was about to leave his palaces, all the queens would look at him with feminine gestures. Feminine gestures. What were they gesturing? Feminine gestures. What were they doing? Or, what kind of gestures were they doing? I don't know. Feminine gestures. The Lord would respond to their greetings with smiles, attracting their hearts so much they would feel intense separation from the Lord. Then the Lord would go to the assembly house known as Sudharma. It may be remembered that the Sudharma assembly house was taken away from the heavenly planets and was reestablished in the city of Dwarka. The specific significance of the assembly house was that anyone who entered it would be freed from the 6 kinds of material pangs, namely hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, old age, and death. Would be freed from those 6 material pangs: hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, old age, and death. These are the webs of material existence. As long as one remains in that assembly house of Sudharma, he would not be infected by the 6 material webs. The Lord would say goodbye in all the 16,000 palaces, and again he would become one and enter Sudharma assembly house in procession with other members of the Yadu dynasty. So how did that work? Daruka, his charioteer, comes to stand before the Lord with folded hands, to intimate that the chariot was ready. Then the Lord, accompanied by Uddhava and Satyaki, would ride on the chariot. He would come, and the Lord was ready, and the Lord would come out of the palace. But there were 16,108 palaces. Where did Uddhava and Satyaki come in, and which palace did Daruka go to? Because evidently, Kṛṣṇa is still in a palace when Daruka comes. Were there 16,108 Darukas? What about Uddhava and Satyaki? Because now we hear that he comes out of the palace and then becomes one Kṛṣṇa and gets into the chariot. Anyway, I'm just trying to understand Hare Kṛṣṇa, the activities of Kṛṣṇa, how he does things. Okay, the Lord would say goodbye in all the 16,000 palaces and again become one and enter Sudharma assembly house in procession with other members of the Yadu dynasty. I want to know, where did Daruka go? If Kṛṣṇa was still 16,108 Kṛṣṇas, where's Daruka? How is he coming before the Lord with a chariot? I want to know. Hare Kṛṣṇa. I'd still like to know how King Satyavrata got Matsya out of the lake because he was too big for a lake and put him in the ocean. I'd still like to know that. After entering the assembly house, he used to sit on the exalted royal throne and would be seen to emanate glaring rays of transcendental effulgence. In the midst of all the great heroes of the Yadu dynasty, Kṛṣṇa resembled the full moon in the sky, surrounded by multi-luminaries. In the assembly house, there were professional jokers, dancers, musicians, ballet girls, and as soon as the Lord sat on his throne, they would begin their respective functions in order to please the Lord and put him in a happy mood. You get a little entertainment here. First of all, the jokers would talk in such a way that the Lord and his associates would enjoy their humor, which would refresh the morning mood. Ha ha ha. Okay. The dramatic actors would then play their parts, and the dancing ballet girls would separately display their artistic movements. All these functions would be accompanied by the beating of mridanga drums and the sounds of the veena, flutes, and bells, followed by the sound of the pakvaj, another type of drum. Along with these musical vibrations, the auspicious sound of the conch shell would be added. The professional singers called suttas and magadhas would sing, and others would perform their dancing art. In this way, as devotees, they would offer respectful prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sometimes the learned brahmanas present in that assembly would chant Vedic hymns and explain them to the audience to their best knowledge, and sometimes some of them would recite old historical accounts of the activities of prominent kings. The Lord, accompanied by his associates, would be very much pleased to hear these accounts of previous prominent kings. So, we're going to go into something else here. And just say that Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare.